Karen Carpenter was born on March 2, 1950, in New Haven, Connecticut, while Richard was born 4 years earlier on October 15, 1946. Their parents, Agnes Ruhr and Harold Bertram Carpenter, had a cold and distant marriage and showed little genuine concern for their children. Agnes blatantly favored Richard, leaving Karen feeling like little more than a shadow within the family. Their father, in contrast, had a deep love for music and owned an impressive record collection spanning various genres: rock, jazz, classical, pop, and soul. This treasure trove of sound profoundly shaped both siblings. Encouraged by their father, Richard showed early musical promise, starting with the accordion before mastering the piano. Karen, however, was less interested in performance at first, preferring to simply listen to music. It wasn't until her teenage years that she discovered a passion for singing and playing instruments. Despite typical sibling quarrels, Karen and Richard remained close. Karen was full of energy and loved sports. She even outshone Richard in neighborhood baseball games, which occasionally irritated him. Agnes' favoritism only grew more obvious over time. She constantly defended Richard while scolding Karen even for the smallest of mistakes. When Richard turned 16, his piano skills had become impressive. Believing he had a real shot at a professional music career, the family relocated to Southern California in 1963. Karen had no say in the decision, though she was reluctant to leave her friends behind. While Richard started performing in clubs, often lying about his age, Karen joined the school band simply to avoid gym class. That accidental choice would ignite her love for drumming. In 1965, Richard formed the Richard Carpenter Trio with Karen on drums and their friend Wes Jacobs on bass. Despite frequent disagreements, Richard declined to include Karen's name in the band's title. Even so, the trio quickly rose in the local scene, performing a blend of popular covers and original songs. Their first major success came in 1966 when they won a prominent music competition and signed a deal with RCA Records. But the soft jazz style they favored couldn't compete with the surging popularity of rock, and RCA soon canceled their contract, leading to the group's disbandment. Undeterred, Richard launched a new group called Spectrum, focusing on vocal harmonies. Although Spectrum failed to gain traction, it was during this time that Richard discovered something extraordinary. Karen wasn't just a great drummer, she had an enchantingly pure and crystal-clear singing voice. Believing it could be their path to success, he convinced Karen to step forward as the lead vocalist. At the time, Karen was 17 and weighed 143 pounds, 65 kilograms, slightly above the era's beauty standards. After losing around 11 pounds 5 kilograms, she received compliments that sparked an obsession with weight control, an obsession that would haunt her for years. In early 1969, their long-awaited break arrived when a friend passed along their demo tape to a record label. Herb Alpert, a celebrated trumpeter and co-founder of A&M Records, was immediately struck by Karen's voice and offered them a contract. Since Karen was not yet 21, their parents had to sign on her behalf. On October 9, 1969, the Carpenters debuted with their first album Offering, which featured Richard on most lead vocals. Unfortunately, the album didn't perform well, and A&M executives considered dropping them. Yet Alpert believed in their potential and stood by them, a decision that would change music history. Herb Alpert, also married to singer Lonnie Hall, not only supported them as a producer but introduced them to the song that would become their breakthrough hit, They Long to Be Close to You. Though the song had been recorded by Richard Chamberlain, Dionne Warwick, Dusty Springfield, and even Alpert himself, none had achieved success with it. Alpert felt that Karen and Richard could bring it to life, and he was right. Released on May 14, 1970, Close to You became a nationwide sensation, selling 3 million copies within 6 months and reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 by July 25. Success continued. Inspired by a wedding commercial jingle, Richard composed We've Only Just Begun, which was released just 3 months after Close to You and soared to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, just behind Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. The song sold over 1 million copies and earned the Carpenters 2 Grammy Awards in 1971. In just 1 year, they had gone from unknowns to international stars. Both hits were included on their second album Close to You, released in late August 1970, which became an instant classic. On January 15, 1971, Karen released For All We Know, which quickly climbed to number 3 on the Billboard charts. By April 23, 1971, they followed with Rainy Days and Mondays, which peaked at number 2. Then came Superstar, another emotionally intense ballad that reached number 2 and cemented their status as icons. Both songs were featured on their third album Carpenters, released on May 14, 1971, the first to display their now iconic logo. Though Karen was the heart and soul of the Carpenters, mesmerizing audiences with her hauntingly beautiful voice, she still chose to sit behind the drums whenever she could. But as their fame grew, so did the pressure and the burden she silently carried behind the spotlight. During early performances, Karen Carpenter often played drums while her brother Richard and other musicians stood front and center. Their fame soared even higher on June 19, 1972, with the release of Goodbye to Love, a commercial triumph and a musical innovation. The song featured a bold fuzz guitar solo, a rare move at the time, pioneered by Richard. This performance is credited with giving birth to the modern power ballad. The song was part of their fourth album A Song for You, released in June 1972, which spawned more hits like Hurting Each Other, peaking at number 2, It's Going to Take Some Time, reaching number 12, and Top of the World, which climbed to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Their popularity even extended to politics. On August 1, 1972, the Carpenters were invited by President Richard Nixon to perform at the White House, marking a significant milestone. On stage, they embodied the American dream, but behind the curtain, their personal lives were far more complex and tragic. To combat chronic insomnia, Richard began using the sedative methaqualone, which was legally available in the U.S. at the time. Unfortunately, he became addicted, quickly falling into a downward spiral. This same drug would later be depicted in The Wolf of Wall Street for its devastating effects. Meanwhile, Karen became fixated on her weight after a harsh article criticized her for appearing slightly overweight. The accompanying photo deeply affected her, launching her into a dangerous cycle of extreme dieting. Despite his addiction, Richard remained professionally active, pouring himself into music in hopes that Karen's talent could carry them through their struggles. His efforts bore fruit on May 1, 1973, with the release of Now and Then, a successful album that reinforced the Carpenters' dominance in the charts. Yet behind their success, Karen's health deteriorated. By 1974, she had dropped to 99 pounds, about 45 kilograms, secretly hiding food, abusing laxatives, and obsessing over her appearance. She encouraged Richard to seek rehab but refused to acknowledge her own issues.